Balmy 23 here.
Rainy in Florence.
Oh.
Cold and sunny in Scotland,
Actually,
as always.
near Florence, there are places where it's currently snowing.
Oh,
In some passes, it's snowing right now.
Yeah. I just can't do northern Italy.
This is central Italy. It's not.
Oh, is it? Well, it's north. If it's north of the Mezzogiorno, it's north for me. I want summer. Sicilia.
right. So, last time we met, about a month, 3 months ago. How long was it ago? 22nd of January. We were talking about a number of things. We talked about Ahab's law, damp and mold, golden thread, and we had a chat yesterday, Dave and I, about what we'd like to focus on today, and it's something that we haven't spoken about a while specifically, and it'd be good to get everyone's more of like a forum and discussion type meeting today about building assessment certificate applications. If you've gone through that, what you've experienced, how you've approached those applications, how long it's taken, and how data has and BIM, that side of things, has fed into that, in terms of all the different areas of a building that need to be evidenced and narrated. So first of all, I guess, has anyone completed a back application and had it successfully approved? Or is this, am I speaking to the wrong audience, and in terms of operations, that's not what any attendees undertake? Excellent, great start.
Yay.
Fantastic start. Is this something that people would find useful to talk about, or is this not relevant to people? Because I'd rather not focus on anything that people aren't going to find useful. The whole point of this forum is to share experiences, knowledge, all of that good stuff, so that we can get an idea of what good looks like and how to improve it going forward as well.
Connor, is this relevant to you, Connor? Give us your view.
Sorry, I'll be completely honest with you. I had to send an email because I was surveying a.
No problem. Is the topic good for you?
What was the topic again? Sorry.
Building assessment certificate applications.
No.
Okay. What about you, Christina? Is this relevant for you?
Unfortunately not, Richard.
Okay, we're doing a straw poll. We're going to try one more person, and that's Jonathan Hallam.
I've never really heard of it, so I don't know if it's kind of relevant or not.
Okay, Bex, I think you got your answer.
Fine. Well, we'll shelve that one then. Oh, Demetrios, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I have just a clarification. Is that on the aspect of occupancy for the building, or which is something that is repeated in a couple of years, or is it something else?
This is when the building safety regulator calls you in to evidence the safety for the building safety case report for your building, basically, and it will be repeated, but they're going through the first tranches at the moment.
Okay, just to understand whether it's on the handover phase or it's on the operational phase of this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're doing that just yet. I think that's an England. If I'm right, I'm thinking of the right thing. That's happening in England, but it's not quite happening yet in Scotland. Although Wheatley are doing building assessments. They're doing their single, I can't remember what the name of the document's called now, single building assessment, which is for high-rise properties for fire safety, and they're looking at their LPS.
Yeah.
High-rise buildings. Is that along the same?
Along a very similar vein, yeah. It's different regulations. At the moment, it's only in England, this building assessment certificate. They are going to roll it out otherwise. And ultimately, everyone who's operating a building that's a high-risk building or defined as that in your country will need to evidence similar things. But I don't think there's regulation yet in Scotland.
Yeah, well, we tend to follow the stuff in England because England moves quicker.
Yeah.
So that we're prepared when it does roll out in Scotland. Part of the reason this group's this group's really good to be a part of for us. But no, we've not done much really on that yet.
All right, thank you, Franco.
Okay, just a thought. First of all, I have no experience of this type of activity, but I just wanted to say something about the situation you are describing, which is a typical situation in which one has to decide which elements of the data stroke information need to be saved or considered for operation and maintenance purposes. Which is something that I thought that, in my opinion, applies to any step of the asset life cycle. You generate stuff. Some you think is important and relevant for O&M, some is not, right? Yeah. So is there any process, any selection criteria in place for this type of activity?
So so in England, the building safety regulator will call upon owners of accountable people of the high-risk building in question to provide a safety case report, which then identifies all of the key structural, fire and building information. And it calls upon the owners to evidence that each element is working as it should, is providing safety to the residents. And there's a few other things as well, not really related to data that they need to do. So we won't go into that right now. But there are so many different things that feed into the safety case report. Some of them aren't relevant and some of them are. And it would just be interesting to talk about how operators manage that information in order to evidence the safety of the building. Again, it's not just high-risk buildings. Ultimately, we need to evidence that every building is safe. And it's just kind of just talking about realistically, what do operators of buildings do and what do they find useful and what would they find would improve it as well?
Right. Are they involved in this phase or are they waiting for you to give them the information that they need in the format that they need?
They being the building safety regulator?
No, the operators and maintainers of the asset, right? Are they somehow involved at this stage? Do they have a chance of saying something about the data that they would like to receive? Or
so at this point, it's buildings that are occupied. So these are buildings that currently have people living in them. You know, they've usually been operated for some years as well. But ultimately, it's buildings that are coming on board as well. So there's that little cross between handover and operation. So at some point, the information gets handed over from the construction phase to the operational phase, then sits with those operators that you're speaking of. And then they need to rationalize that information into a solid evidence to tell the regulator in the UK, England, that the building is safe and this is why it's safe. And it's a basis of the fire and the structural elements mainly in that as well.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Not a problem. Jonathan.
Yeah, because I'm right in thinking because of linking with the buildings, the Safety Act. Is this mainly focused on the high-rise buildings at the moment?
Absolutely. The golden thread is advisable for most
Mm.
most buildings. It's good practice, and government have put out guidance on what that actually is. You know, it's digital, single source of truth, all of that good stuff that we already know. But yeah, for the moment, it is the high risk buildings that need to create this to present to the regulator.
Yeah, so coming from wider defence state, and although now particularly focusing on particular different buildings on the areas in Babcock, naval ones, nuclear, and things like that.
Mhm.
It probably doesn't apply to a lot of the buildings which are on the estate. But I think in principle, I think it'd be really good to see what the things are being identified, because I would think at some point it'll get to more buildings,
It
so
will, yeah.
types. So whatever the things are being looked at and checked off from, also from a handover perspective as well. So ready for those, that even buildings being built now can kind of get ahead of the game. That whatever's being checked and being asked of is already being looked at. So it'd be good to see a breakdown and look through.
I am going to pop a link to it. Before it moved to its own thing, it was part of the HSC. So this is their criteria at the moment, and each of these, I'm just popping it in the chat now. Each of these elements needs to be evidenced, and you know that's a lot of that data that would be held, a lot of that information, and I know a lot of companies are struggling to find that because it's all here, higgledy-piggledy, here, there, and everywhere. So yeah, I was just interested into if anyone's had experience of this, how they've managed that data, how they've managed those interoperabilities with maintenance, for example, and then as-built drawings and things like that. So I popped that in the chat, which might be a bit useful, so you know exactly what kind of thing they're looking for currently anyway. Everything's subject to change in the building safety sphere anyway. So that might be quite useful to have a look through.
And can I just also ask, is this mainly also on residential?
At the moment, yes.
Yeah.
I think the principles generally really good to know about your buildings, but ultimately legally they're only calling these forward for the HRBs at the moment.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Jonathan, the idea of the claims argument evidence structure of the safety case report came from nuclear. So it was based on what they were doing in the nuclear sector. And then they sort of translated that format, the idea that you make a claim, then you argue why that claim is valid, and then you support that claim with evidence. And obviously you have an overarching claim that says, we believe this building is safe. And then underneath that, you will have sort of sub-claims, if you like, and then arguments against those claims. And then obviously to back it up, that's when you supply the evidence, be it certificates or installation reports or etc., specifications on, if you take a fire door, proving that the specification meets the standard. And so the safety case report, if you like, is a report that you supply as part of the assessment process, of which you make the claims, you argue your point, and you supply the evidence. And then the overarching, what they call the safety case, is the amalgam of everything that you have. So you have the safety case report, which is what you submit, but the safety case is basically the body of evidence to prove that a building is safe. Yeah. And as I said, I think for new build specs, they were supposed to call in new builds within 6 months, is it? I think from memory. And then existing buildings, then they've got them in tranches depending on I think it's the number of occupants and the number of floors, I think, means that it's a priority one. So they're the ones that are being called in first, and then gradually down the line they'll call in the smaller populated buildings, unless they find something or someone reports something. In which case you get bumped up the chain pretty damn quickly, because obviously there's an issue there.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the buildings will all be called in, like I said, in tranches. I'm not sure about the 6-month thing for new buildings. I'll have to look at that, because I thought it was a case they just got called in, much like the other ones with the 28 days, but I might be wrong on that one. Have a look at that. Would this be useful to carry on talking about, or shall we move on to the second subject that we had spoken about potentially might be a good forum? We'll move on, because it is something probably that we're all looking at. It's become quite prominent, and that is AI. How is everyone using AI in terms of operating their buildings efficiently, and whether there's any really good case studies? We've got really good examples, really bad examples. What have we seen? Is it useful? Is it not useful?
I don't know of really using a single piece of AI other than ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot to help write out documentation.
Yeah.
I have seen we're trialing a couple of surveying tools, although I'm not quite convinced yet that if through drone surveys and image recognition to help people diagnose issues in the field. I had used them a couple of years ago, and they weren't great. Although these ones appear to be slightly better, recognising. Although I'm not sure if it's AI or if it's just better graphics in the cards. The drone survey can pick up heat signatures in holes in the roof to, I think it's like 1 or 2 mil. So we can see in roofs if there's 1 or 2 mil holes across a roof where water's getting in. And that's been shown. The company did one in Inotech, I think it is. I think the company's called. Did a warehouse in the Netherlands, and this AI-powered drone, what they're calling it, detected these really small 1-2 mil holes across the roof, and that's where all the moisture problems were. So they went and filled it up, and they've not had a moisture problem since. That's as close as we're getting to AI use at the moment, is trialing this.
And is that like a learning system then as well? Does it, does it take that information it's gleaned from those buildings and sort of finds out where other areas of risk could be in the future, or is it not quite that clever yet?
See, this is the bit where I'm not sure as to whether it's actually AI or if it's just better graphics, because they're not actually in the building yet to do the pilot. So we've had the elevator pitch, if you'd like, and we've been given the case study, and it looks really good enough that that we're going to do a pilot with them. But we've not sort of been in. Well, I've not been in the room with them yet to ask these kind of questions.
Could you share that case study? Sounds interesting.
Yes, I'll need to email it. I need to email it across because I'll need to find it. It's on a SharePoint somewhere.
Yeah. Nice one. Thanks a lot. Is anyone else using this new tech, evolving tech?
I think similar, mostly likes of Copilot. I've been using Copilot quite a lot to look into wider standards, things like that, to get usage. At the moment, though, it's a little bit we've got a little mini working group, kind of people who are interested in it. A guy did a presentation on prompts and things like that last week in chats. And so in the working group, we put in a lot of suggestions of what use cases could be. But at the moment, it's having to go to a centralized body, which is centralizing policy, and then they look at it. Things may have been looked at very similarly in different parts of the business. Sometimes they may not have, but it needs to get approval by them, and then kind of a mini project is come up with. It's not really. I don't see, especially in our sector, that it's not very easy to cut unless it's inbuilt into a piece of software already that we've already got. So, like for example, if something was built into Autodesk, that it's not easy for us to pick up something off like even Copilot's being very skeptical at the moment. It's probably it's going to change in the next so many months with upgrades, but certain projects you can't use Copilot on. So I can't put, even though I'd love to, because it's a ginormous document and I've just joined and trying to get my head around things, I can't put the BEP through Copilot because it's project specific and it's things on. But things around public facing things, I can put in, ask questions, get some nicer summaries than me having to read through 200 pages and try and work out a summary and things. So that's mainly what I use it, but I've had more usage in previous place. The things which I've had is probably particularly in operations areas when you've had millions of files used and some of them not great templates, not great state, some of them scanned in, some of them really poorly named. So in my previous organization, we had 13 million files come over from previous contracts, and the majority of them weren't named correctly, and we wanted to get one named correctly, but also get the information out of them, the certificate numbers, the dates, to know where things were up to, instead of probably most of the time is people doing repeat work when that work was done, but because they couldn't find the certificate, they just went or the last survey, they just went back and did it again because they couldn't find the file. So that's probably one of the biggest use cases I had. And at my previous place, that because of, I would say, more people and systems utilized, that project actually got cancelled. It did one test on one site. The results did not go well. I even fed back on some stuff, and it was mainly, I would say it's mainly was because of the people leading on it, and then the piece of software. It wasn't necessarily even the software which was used. It was just kind of being used in the kind of, because I keep saying for a lot of things with AI, it's how you train it. So this piece of software could have been a lot better utilized, trained. They weren't, people were doing it weren't using people who had the estate knowledge, who had been working at these sites, the defence estate for decades. They were just basically going, oh, we know the software, we'll just plow on and do it. And yet the wrong answers were coming back. They were using wrong sections of the drawings to pull out the wrong parts to fill out the metadata and the net file names. So we're getting back wrong results, which actually in some cases were taking us backwards. So that was completely canned. But in some cases, particularly with the operations where you move on, and when we change standards, and particularly like the naming convention quite frequently, it's always good when to go through that and update things without having to go through and do everything manually. So that's probably my biggest use case.
I mean, that's ultimately, it's kind of where AI comes into its own, is all that meaning stuff, isn't it? Making sure that those 13 million files are all relevant. And in terms of So you said that happened in previous place. I don't know how long ago was that, and how trustworthy was the actual thing that came out, the output?
The outputs were trustworthy. The actual outputs it did, then the process was relevant. The problem was it was picking up the wrong parts of the file. So
Right.
it was like, for example, in the description of the file, it was pointed. Somebody had decided, and I kind of was showing the results. I originally did the business cases before, and then I got taken off it. And even though I was getting to know inside and out, and that's why there was management issues and things like that. And so instead of getting a nice description of what the file is, one example was like a ground maintenance plan. They picked up the address field. So it was basically the CAD department building of such and such company. So it's picking up the wrong things.
Right.
And so the main objective was to fill out a nice ISO compliant and whatever the naming convention which was being followed, or what the naming convention was for that project and that those buildings and related. And it was just picking up the wrong parts, but it was picking up the wrong parts so much that then other people who don't kind of see the same things the same way as probably us do and see BIM things, and you know when you present something to them, if it doesn't hit right at all, it switches off. And that basically happened, and basically they saw loads of things going, well, this is not what we need, and then the project was cancelled. Although I have now left there, and I think there was talk of being resurrecting it, but I
Yeah.
don't know. To me, it needed more people working with the business, and it was basically go software company, you do it.
Yeah. I think it's very much, especially for the work we take a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I have issues with trusting AI. I'll chuck something into Copilot and it'll tell me the wrong measurements. So I you've always got to do that double check at the moment, which is not ideal, but I mean that's kind of our job. So
To me, it also links back as well with having the right templates, because if you can have a good template, because this was using AWS software, Textract, but there was a Microsoft tool as well which can do pretty much the same thing. And all it needs to do is basically, if you have, and I would say pretty much most of our CAD templates, if we all pick them up, we'll probably see them virtually the same. I'm sure they'll tweak in areas, but it just looked at a CAD drawing or something and go, right, that box has the date, that box has the title, that box has the originator who was doing it. So teaching it and then go, right, put that into the file name or put that into this metadata field. But then obviously if you come across and you think, oh, that's my plan of this drawing, and then you come across others and it's gone, well, this isn't the same template, and then it's false. That's sometimes why it starts to fall apart.
yeah.
So I would never say 100%, and also you would need hands-on things to keep an eye on it.
Great, thanks. Is anyone else using AI in a way to manage the operation of buildings?
Hi everyone, it's Megan here. I work with Walter AC, which is a BIM consultancy, and so majority of our work is helping architectural or engineering companies to deliver their BIM projects. But we also work with later stages, especially in Scandinavian markets, which are more mature and they more ready to to receive models and maintain them during operation and maintenance phase. So that's one thing I wanted to share, but also our sister company, which is called BIM4Housing. They built a platform where they're using machine learning to read the information, various information received, as in PDFs, Excel sheets, and then various formats of models and related information to automate modeling. So to a certain degree, of course, there are human checks in the end, but they are using a lot of machine learning. Just you could call it AI, but to automate those processes and streamline them. I don't know if anyone is interested. I could maybe get a founder to talk a little bit more on a specific case study in more mature markets. So yeah,
it might be worth looking at. Any sharing of what works and what doesn't work is always a good thing. That sounds really interesting. And in terms of the machine learning, what kind of benefits have you seen from that so far?
Well, I would say validation of information received and how it makes its way to the model, and then there are applications, and this is like I'm not a programmer, but this is from what I know from the team. There's lots of work going into how this information is then fed to Revit and how this is automated in Revit, so we do not. So we avoid more and more the manual labor while producing those models.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to contribute?
Yeah, probably worth saying, and I know there are a couple of other compliance software solutions that do this, but we built our own in Dynamics 365. And what we use it for is we've trained it to look at certificates that come in from our contractors. So if we've got people doing gas checks or electrical certificates or lift certificates, Legionella certificates, all of those things, basically providing they send us a sample of what the format of their certificates, we then train the AI to look at that sample and point out which information is important to us to store in the system as data, and that invariably is things like the servicing date, when the date the thing was serviced or maintained, who it was done by, the contractor, the name of the operative that did that, and it just pulls that information from each certificate and then plonks it into the system and then automatically updates the next servicing date. So it will take the date that an item was serviced, and if the servicing frequency is 12 months, it will then set the next servicing date for 12 months since the certificate that's received. And it took a bit of time because every contractor has a different template for how they supply stuff. You would think they'd be fairly uniform, but invariably they're not. And then occasionally we've had contractors where they've decided to change their template. And this may be something where they've merged with another company, so they put another logo on the template, which has shifted everything down or moved anything across. And at the moment, we run about 90% success rate, which, when you consider we've got contractors that perhaps service, I don't know, 100 gas boilers a month, to do that manually. Yeah. Go look up the address, go and put in, well, right, it was serviced on this date by this company. It saves a hell of a lot of time because now they only have to check the ones that have failed. So they run it as a batch routine. The AI gets all the information out of the certificates, says whether it's successfully done it or not. And then you get a very small list of the ones that have failed. So you can then go in and look at those manually and say, are. The reason that's failed is perhaps they forgot to put the date in, which, you know, has happened a few times. And that way, from a resource perspective, it frees up a lot of resource that would normally do that as a manual task. So, or compile a spreadsheet and then try and upload a spreadsheet in. But you know, even so, it's saved a lot of time. Yeah. So that's what we use it for currently. And it was all written in house. Didn't took one bloke, you know, a couple of weeks to do it. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That sounds really useful. Does that learn? I'm just trying to think about the AI element as well, because that's, you know, that a lot of that is like the automation, and it's clever, it's reading stuff. Can it then, again, I'm thinking way ahead in terms of operating a building, see patterns and trends?
In theory, it probably could, but it would only really see patterns and trends on a particular contractor's performance and accuracy, which is a good thing, because they're always doing a better job than they are. Yeah, so because it's actually doing that work at the input stage, if you like, it's not really then going, you know, across the actual building. However, obviously, we have Power BI reports that, you know, are real-time reports that we can pull off, right, which buildings are overdue for a particular type of job. And that Power BI report, when we first brought it out, there was a lot of people with scared looks on their faces because they'd never actually seen how, you know, short they were on compliance. And because it was listed by every single component. So it would show the percentage in date, the percentage out of date, you know, and then you could obviously drill down to see the particular properties that were overdue. Yeah. So we haven't relied on AI to do that, because that's just raw data that's easy enough to pull out in a report.
Right, thanks, Dave. Jonathan, then.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of say, Dave, was that, or was it a kind of Word files or PDF? Was it particular format? Because I know I've seen before variety, probably more PDFs, but sometimes it's a PDF of somebody done a picture or a scan, and that sometimes that impacts quality. Did you get those same and still be able to handle them?
Yeah, to be honest with you, yes, the majority of them were in PDF format. Some of them were done just as a spreadsheet. If it didn't need a certificate, it basically needed to say that it had been inspected, then those were just supplied as CSVs, which were easy to read. It's always the case. I mean, I was involved in document management for years, and it's always the case that handwriting is the hardest thing to read. Machine type, even with scanned copies that are then, you know, like a scanned photo, which is then converted to a PDF. Normally with machine text, you've got a reasonable chance of getting, you know, it readable. But handwriting is, you know, no one's going to be able to solve handwriting 100% without doubt. Yeah. Which is why a lot of the times now you see where it says print name and sign, in the hope that, you know, the printed name at least is readable. Yeah.
And
the thing is, with the actual certificates, we do store them as well. So, you know, in theory, if you're looking at it and you just want to think, well, you know, that you know, that name doesn't look like it's a proper name, you can actually just, you know, go into the actual PDF and have a look at it visually. But it won't fail if you can find something that's readable as a name. So yeah.
And I think this would something like that would have helped my previous place, because of the amount of files coming through. On the defence estate, had something like 20,000 files coming through each week. Of hundreds, thousands of buildings. And one of the particular areas working with was ICT cabinets. So checking their compliance, which they have major and minor kind of inspections. But particularly even file name, which we kept revising and adding more detail in, they didn't know what the certificate really detailed until they opened it. and sometimes they had to find the files to then open it and then take it in. So having something like that, I worked with somebody to create a power. They created a power app, but that was just a power app to even show what all the files were. Then they'd have to then go each open them to then work out whether which one's failed. Why did it fail? What's the next date, which has been suggested by the engineer? So that would have saved them so much time, and that was only one use case.
Yeah,
It's quite nice when sometimes you hear from some places going, "Well, I've only got one building to deal with," when you've got hundreds of thousands of them.
Yeah, you're right. As I said, I mean, you know, it's never going to be 100% successful, but just the fact that you don't have to go and manually check, 90% of them is a good enough reason to make that investment in and that sort of AI ability. I mean, funny enough, and this is going back in the early days of it. I was involved in doing a thing for the TV licensing authority in order to, because it was in the days when you weren't doing your TV license online, everyone got a form that they had to fill in and all that sort of thing. So they used to get thousands in a day and scan them and read them and then mark them off as paid against their database. So in those particular use cases, it saves a hell of a lot of time and effort from a resource perspective.
Thanks. Anyone else who wants to come in? So Dave, do you have anything else that we could potentially chat about? So there's those two things. We thought the discussion might be a bit longer on the building assessment certificate side, but that's absolutely fine. This is a forum, again, for the operations of buildings. So if there's anything anyone would find useful for us to chat about as well, please. Oh, hello, Demetrios.
Hi, thank you again. My perspective is from the point of view of information management related to the building information models and how they're used. So I'm going to ask on that perspective. We're talking about operations. Everybody's trying to put an effort into standardizing somehow this whole process and getting value added from this effort. However, we're not talking too much about the means of how this is achieved with respect to the technology part, whether that's a certain type of process, a standard used, or something that will be generated. And I would like to ask a little bit of, let's say, insight on that aspect. To give you an example, at this moment, there is Kobe that is used in the BIM files related to the open schema of IFC. There are also utilization from proprietary formats from ArchiCAD or Revit. And I know that everyone's trying to unify all these aspects in order to get the information. However, what I see in the end is that the only standard that is reliable, available, and at the moment is the IFC standard. And I don't want to say that this gives us the final solution, but I really cannot see a lot of value from generating let's say sub platforms or sub applications to derive the data in a non-standardized manner from proprietary formats. And if this is something that it has to be also guided utilizing the golden thread. I mean, after all, golden thread, that means a standardized means of transmitting information. Would anybody give us a little bit of insight of how this will be achieved, or how the group sees this being achieved? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Demetrius. That very interesting question. So if anyone's got any comment on those, I don't have any personal experience
and
on those.
if I would like to also to add something else. Everyone's talking about introducing data. We're not talking about validation of the data introduced. It's also a point that needs to be treated. And people, yes, are using AI systems in order to introduce data within, extract the data from various type of formats. But at the end of the day, how sensitive is that information? How critical it is within the scope of golden thread? If one parameter is not validated, it's not correct, what is the cost of the error of that parameter?
Great. So does anyone want to come in on this one, please?
Well, I mean, having gone through this several times with various contractors, you're absolutely right, Demetrius. However, I think there is still an onus on the client to specify what they need at the outset of any development, and this is what I see often where when they actually decide what data they want in what format, whether it's COBE, whether it's FSC, whether it's a CSV file, it doesn't get specified, and it's only at the end or very close to the end near handover that the operations teams put their hands up and go, oh yeah, where's the information, what format's it going to be in? And they go, well, you haven't told us what format you want it in. And before you know it, they're going back to the principal contractor, principal designer, asking for stuff that they should have asked for at the very beginning and specified what data they wanted on which components, what format. And so it then becomes an additional cost and an additional resource intensive task to create that, because you basically sort of close the door after the horse has bolted. And that's where I think you get a lot of inaccurate information, because it's all done in a hurry last minute, because nobody, put that in front and center at the beginning of a project to say, this is what we need, this is the format. And that's where, the idea of having an enterprise information model, a project information model, etc., an asset information model that specifies what information you require to run a building operationally should be a major part of that thing, of designing and building a building. And the other thing is that the back-end systems that operational teams use, as their asset management system, invariably comes from suppliers that have been around for years, have always done something a certain way, have sort of tacked on little bits and pieces as they went along. And because of that, you're still going to have to do a translation between whatever data you've got and then what even just the naming convention in your own asset management system, to do a translation between what's called, I don't know, an FD30 and a COBE file that's just called a fire door 30-minute resistance in your asset management system. So it took, in my organization, it took roughly 2 to 3 months of going through every operational team, be it asset management, be it compliance, being it the repairs team, etc., to actually create a data dictionary for our organization that had every component, what we called it within our systems, and then be able to share that with the development teams in order to say, yes, this is the information we need. These are the components we need the information on. This is what we call them, but we need to translate between what that means in IFC or Kobe data into what it's called, on the ground. Because no one in no repairs operative that's fixing a dodgy boiler is going to know the IFC number off by heart for that and then plumb that in. They're going to call it a boiler, and they might call it, just call it a gas boiler, or they might call it an electric boiler, but they're going to use the terms that they're familiar with on the ground. And you have to make that bridge between raw data with lovely categorization numbers and basically what people use in day-to-day life. That's what my experience has found anyway, that it really needs that nailed down right at the beginning rather than doing it as a last minute add-on and people panicking and people spending hours poring over operations manuals and health and safety files just to pull information out and then create it in data that's readable by an asset management system used by the operation teams.
Yes, I would tend to agree with you there as well, Dave. Demetrios?
I think that Dave spoke very well about these issues. There are two certain gaps. One is from the gap between the developer and the operation teams. In most of the cases, the operation teams comes last and says, okay, bring me the information so I can work on them. And the second, and I think the most critical one, is from the contractor to delivery handover of the actual information that have been implemented for that specific development. Designers can say a lot of things about how they see the project being realized. However, in the end, it's the contractor that will be delivering the information as a whole. And that's the most difficult key point, I think, in the whole process. In most of the cases, the contractor is not able to provide this information. And that is where I think the problem resides. And another small parenthesis in the upcoming revision of the 19650 standard that has to do with information management in general in the built environment. The effort is given mostly now to the developer from the client perspective to raise up a little bit the bar with respect to the information requirements of downstream. So what if there was also an effort of the operation teams to join in on that one and provide information about their requirements with respect to what should be included? And it's not only Kobe wise. Kobe has, let's say, the maintainable assets. But the operation team, I think it's not only about the maintainable asset that needed. There are also assets that need to be introduced as information aspects and which are not at the moment.
Right. Thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, I would completely agree. And I think one of the things as well is with the client side, is quite often the you would normally have like 2 or 3 people who are running the facility, who are with the client. So the actual people who kind of own the building. And then what they mainly do is then contract out somebody to manage and maintain that building. And they'll try and keep it to so where I used to work with DIO, you would have 2 or 3 people who would look over facility managers over that site, which would be massive sites. You maybe have like a building custodian who will be a bit more specific to certain buildings. And you may have certain teams depending on how complex the building is. But you'd have basically a contractor who is contracted out for tendering and everything like that, who has treble the amount of staff doing all these things. It's getting, to me, it's a lot of the time, it's getting that coherence between both. Mostly the client who has less staff doesn't always see the things. They just want to have the building up and running day in, day out. And getting their time to come in and do a lot of things which we're discussing is really hard. And normally you probably need more of a central team, but sometimes the central team doesn't have the expertise because the facility team know that building inside and out, or it's a more complex building. So you need the SMEs to know, like for example, where Drip's moved to now, it's a nuclear building, so you need to know certain things. Whereas you can only it's great to take things from the contractors who are doing that facility management and that maintenance day in, day out, particularly if they're an exiting one or you've had too much reliance on them. But then you also need to take all that information, what they've been doing, most likely, if they've been doing it for a long time, they probably haven't even been doing a 3D model or a BIM model. That's what I found in previous operations. I've hardly found any of them really are doing BIM stuff in the operation space. But you can't completely rely. That's, I think, where the biggest gap is going. You need to have more from the client, the owner, going, well, we want it this way. And then they say, you must provide it in this way. There's too much reliance on the maintenance contractor, the facility management contractor, to kind of work themselves through it. I think it's changing, but I think sometimes it still needs to go further. And it's the catch up of the client who needs to understand what they need to ask of the contractor to go, you need to provide it this way. You need to give us information. You need to have the BIM model updated because you've just changed you just knocked down a wall to make a room bigger or something, even though it was built 2 years ago. Because that's the other thing which I see so many times is even if you get a BIM model, particularly when you've got a BIM model provided through the construction, you've handed it over, it's then never maintained or updated if you have some kind of minor works done to it. I've seen before where the conference rooms split into two or the opposite, things like that. But the actual BIM model you go into it again is just the same as what it was when it was the construction was finished. So it's updating that, and that's I think a lot of it is on the operations facility management contractor, and I've not really seen, and it'd be great to hear some better circumstances. I've not seen a lot where they really utilize BIM files, Kobe, IOC, and actually exchange, and a lot of it's then put on the onus of the client is to try and have a centralized, and I've only seen it works better when it's a centralized team because they're the only ones who have a resource, but then they may not have the resource and the knowledge of specific areas.
And I think you've touched on there the key crux of it is the skills and knowledge, isn't it? So when my experience as a client, I would see contracts go out asking for BIM level 2, and I would know for certain that nobody would ever open those files. No one even have the software to even be able to operate them, let alone keep them updated or even know that they would have to. And I think that's where the skills gap lies at the client face. And it's having an educated client is one of the most valuable things for a project, really, because they know what they're asking for. But if you don't know what you're asking for, you ask for the world and you don't use it, and then it's a waste of it's a confusing lot of data. And too much information is almost as bad as not enough.
I need to drop off now, but it's been good to chat.
Thanks a lot. Hey, George.
Oh,
Hi, I'm
George.
sorry, I was on the Get It Right initiative workshop just now, so that's quite an interesting group. So I apologise.
Interestingly, Bex, I thought, well, we could probably finish this meeting early, and then George turned up, and I thought, oh, bloody hell.
Cut to the quick.
Does
I
anyone
think
have any? Oh, sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, I think there's a couple of people coming along to the meeting this afternoon on O&M handover, which you know, we can probably pick up on some things.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things we were just talking about, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just as I said, George, you know, we've been, you know, talking about that subject and the fact that when it comes to handover information, you know, it's all well and good trying to incorporate, you know, standards like IFC and various bits and pieces, but somewhere along the line, you've got to translate that data into something that makes sense to the people on the ground and your own asset management system. Because as you remember, for me sending you our data dictionary, you know, our asset management system calls a spade a shovel. But if IFC, it's not called a spade or a shovel, it's just got a nice long code against it. You've got to translate that code into you know, something that's a word that people understand, and then translate that into whatever it's called within your asset management system. So those translation tables take a fair bit of work, and if they're not shared with the principal designer and principal contractor from day one, you could get data in any sort of format that, you know, even if it's nicely structured COBie, you've still got to take that data and then convert it into something that's readable by your asset management system, and also understandable by the operatives on the ground, because they're not going to go, oh, I've got to go out and expect an IFC 23-1-32-256 today. You know, they're going to say, you know, I'm going to go in and inspect a, you know, gas boiler. So it's you know,
and
ability to translate. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the point, really, isn't it? It's that translation, and I think by using proper taxonomy and also libraries,
Yes.
then that becomes relatively easy now.
Yeah, but as I said, because you've got, you know, I don't know how many asset management vendors there are in the marketplace, but probably, I'd guess in England, 20 odd or something like that, plus bespoke systems that have been written by other people. There's going to be different data dictionaries and different taxonomy for each one of those systems in order for, you know, an individual client to be able to match to their back-end systems and their terminology. Yeah.
That's why we need more standardization.
Yeah.
And the other challenge is that all of these different systems, they principally don't do anything in terms of encouraging clients to do things in a standardized way, because they're often being implemented by people that are generating consulting income. So therefore, it's not in their interest to use standardization. So that's something I think we as a BIM and asset management community, for example, and the BIM4Housing community ought to be able to influence.
Yeah. And then, as I said, but it's also knowing that Bob the plumber understands the terminology.
No. The point is, if you can get that baseline, my view is that if you can get that baseline standardization organized, then you can have multiple ways of then presenting the information in ways that make it easy to find. What we need to do, though, is there's got to be an anchor that we can work to, and then that anchor is relevant to all the different interpretations of it. You know, I think that's what we need to.
And I think that's where standards work well in, you know, in having that unique identifier for a specific, thing. I mean, interestingly, that's where the Dewey Decimal System for libraries was, it's still in use today, and that was considered such a sort of prime example of how to have something that's completely meaningless to someone who looks at it, but then there was a translation that said, oh, you're looking for ancient Egyptian architecture, that's Dewey Decimal 647.23. And in actual fact, when I got involved with the e-government initiative ages ago, they actually got librarians to come up with the system, and they were called the Dublin Core. But the thing with that is it was done by librarians, not by practitioners, and became totally, you couldn't understand what they were going on about from the perspective of tagging documentation, because they were doing it from a librarian perspective, not from an operative's perspective. Demetrius, sorry, I realise you've had your hand up for a while. I'll shut up.
No. I'm just listening to the conversation. Mainly, I would like to ask how many of the platforms for ONH are at the moment supporting any kind of standard such as COBie, so that the data can be transferred either by the Excel format styled sheet, or whether that's an IFC, or whether that's an export from the Revit using the respective plugin. Is there real use of this type of standard within the ONH, or is it something that it's just an export, a tick mark on a list?
Which standard are you talking about, Demetrius?
COBie.
COBie is a standard. It's a data schema. It doesn't define what things should be called. You need a taxonomy that supports that. So COBie is a way
if you want to export the data, you need to map them. But what I'm talking about is that at the moment there are applications that are using that kind of mapping, and you can have COBie data delivered to the application that does the operation. So
no, I agree. What I'm saying though, the COBie schema is pretty high level, but it's something that you wouldn't normally think of not doing, as in it's floor space, asset type, zone, etc. But the detailed information that you need, what you're asking for was what detailed information is needed for the O&M, when you say the O&M system, do you mean the maintenance system?
Yes. What I was referring to is that, okay, you have maintainable assets and non-maintainable assets. So both of which have information within an information model. Whether those information are needed in the operational system, both of them as maintainable assets and non-maintainable assets.
Yeah, you'd need an asset type ID, and then the asset type ID will be defined by the client, and ideally, they should be using some sort of standardized description for a smoke damper or something like that.
Interestingly, for instance, this idea of non-maintainable assets, I think virtually, I'm trying to think of any part of the building that doesn't have some sort of life cycle attached to it for replacement or repair.
Absolutely.
And I'd be struggling to think of anything. I mean, doors, windows, roofs, walls, etc. All have set life cycles. whether they exceed those life cycles or don't exceed those life cycles, it's there as a benchmark for how long before you should look to see whether something needs replacing or not. So there's still that, obviously with compliance related things where there's very, very small life cycles of maintenance and servicing, that could be every month, every 3 months, every 6 months, every year. But then a roof might be every 25 years.
I absolutely agree, Dave. And what you've just said there is something that frustrates me enormously, because the BIM community has arrived at a perspective about maintainable and non-maintainable that's largely been driven by understanding what PPMs are about. So when they talk about CAFM systems, typically, they're talking about planned and preventative maintenance activity, which is it's probably less than 20% of the maintenance activity, because there's a lot of maintenance activity that is reactive. And as you said, there's a lot of maintenance activity that's about life cycle replacement. So therefore, the asset information that is delivered in the COBie environment, through the COBie environment, should cover all of those different areas. And there's no practical reason why it shouldn't. It's just that it's been arrived at because the people that were putting together the outputs from the BIM models didn't really understand what FMs and asset managers needed. Yeah, and that's not a criticism of them. The asset teams haven't been good at telling the designers and contractors what they need. And that's broadly what we're trying to do, I think, here and also in BIM in asset management.
Yeah, Beck's smiling because this was very, very early on in this meeting. Before you arrived, that was one of the things that we were talking about the fact of people leaving it to the last minute to let people know what information they needed, rather than it all being prescribed from the onset, so that people knew what they had to deliver from an information perspective. So yeah, so absolutely right, George. You were an hour late, but yeah, you came to the same conclusion as the rest of us.
Excellent.
I mean, one thing that just to let you know, we've been asked to help at the next stage of the process of defining what as built means. Yeah. And I've been invited to participate in something that's a CLC led thing. So this will actually get wrapped into the golden thread, right?
Yeah.
Because that's really where we need to be going with this. Because there's a whole range of discussions at the moment, because people are saying, well, we can't provide any, we can't say that drawing is as built. So what people are doing, they're rowing back from that and having terms like as constructed or construction issue or whatever, and they're refusing to do that. So it's very frustrating. So what the intention of this activity is to be a bit more explicit in terms of what as built means.
Yes. Yeah, particularly where, I'll give you a really good example with the King's Cross sites at the moment, where the provided information said there was a fire alarm system and an AOV system in a particular building, showed the locations, showed all the information on it. What it didn't show was the fact that the two sides of the building weren't isolated. So you couldn't test the fire alarms in one side of the building without the other side of the building going off, and and the lift stopping, which caused a bit of an issue that we sent our contractors in to do the fire alarm testing on our social housing side of the building, and the private sector side of the building all of a sudden found the lifts had shut down because the two systems weren't isolated, and that wasn't picked up in any of the information provided or data, and therefore that oversight meant that retrospectively we've had to go back in there and isolate both of those systems so that the two sides of the building don't affect each other. But it was something that wasn't picked up at all because the information wasn't available to say that. There was no schema to show you that the two sides of the building weren't isolated. So
I think that's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're arriving at is that there's, in terms of the operations and the asset information, there's two principal sources of that. There's what was in the model, and therefore what typically is in the COBE, and there's what's in the health and safety files and the O&Ms. But typically, as you know, Dave, most people aren't checking the O&Ms and the health and safety files thoroughly.
Yeah.
And even when they are, they're checking them in isolation to the BIM data.
Yeah.
Or the COBE data. So we've got that, sort of disconnect. And that's what we're trying to address. We've got the workshop this afternoon where we're trying to tackle the O&M and the health and safety file side of things.
Yeah. Cool.
Is that all right, Dimitros?
Yes. What I would like to ask is there a standardized method of delivering, at least in the UK, I'm not aware in other states, of delivering the operation and the handover?
That's what we're trying to define.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's two things that in the UK, I don't know what it's like in Romania, but in the UK, there's a health and safety file, that's a statutory requirement. So in other words, every project must have, every project where there's more than one contractor, which is pretty well everyone, has to produce a health and safety file.
And that covers all the aspects of operational requirements? Okay.
No.
So you need other information containers in order for you to arrive into a result that covers all the information that you need.
Correct. So there's the health and safety file, and then a subset of the health and safety file is the operating and maintenance information. The operating and maintenance information is not statutory. But what most people do, they incorporate the operating and maintenance information in with the health and safety file. But it's not done in a standardized way, and that's really what we're trying to get agreed.
Would you happen to assert a certain ballpark of what of these information is covered within the COBE schema?
We can put anything in the COBE schema.
No, I'm referring from the information delivered within that H&E, health and safety deliverable. How much of it would you consider that is included into the COBE?
I would put most of it in. Yeah, the COBE, the COBE there is really an interpretation of what's in the model. So it's floors, spaces, systems. There's the means of putting risk in there as well. So there's something called issues where you can put risk in as well. So I think it's as a schema, it can accommodate that. The principal reason for having a health and safety file is to identify what the risks are, and what measures have been put in place to protect against that risk. That's the principal reason. That's my understanding. Do you know more than that, Bex, or would you say that's? Would you know about that? The health and safety file.
Well, we go through them, and when I'm writing my safety case reports, that's a very key piece of information. But as far as I'm aware, I've not come across any standardization, any regularization. Some people use numbering formats, some people don't. So it varies, irritatingly.
Yeah, I mean, we've done work with the Health and Safety Executive, which is the organisation that oversees this, to come up with a standardised health and safety file structure. So we've got that, Dimitros, which is really a folder structure. And although we don't, we're using that as a database schema itself, but we're doing that within the COBE environment.
Okay.
We could, if you wish, I can show you that.
Well, yeah, I would be interested. Yes.
Good.
Excellent. So we've got 5 minutes. Is there anything anyone else wants to bring up? We've had a really good discussion, actually.
Just as put in the chat the link for the meeting, which starts in an hour and a half. The big O&M meeting, if anybody's interested, it covers O&M, H&S. If anybody's interested in that, just click on the link and it will take you there.
What time does that one start?
It's an hour and a half.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, lovely.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't go to those because I've got an asset management meeting and a King's Cross, my final King's Cross meeting. So, a lot of final things going on this week.
Dave, remember
so many meetings and so little time.
Dave, remember we've actually got that in action plan now, that King's Cross. So.
Yeah, it's a shame that the King's Cross sites, you haven't got profiles of the residents, mate. Yeah, that's what I need. Yeah, the ones that they cut in order to get to the bin store. If they haven't got their fob, they use the in case of emergency break glass thing and break it to open the door up, and then once that's open, they then wedge it so that it stays open. Yeah. So much for fire safety, eh? I mean, not to also mention that there's a lovely coffee shop on the ground floor, and people throw their wet nappies and used nappies and serviettes and you name it over the balcony onto the patrons of the coffee shop sat there having a latte on and a nice table outside. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You can't make it up.
No, I know. Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
All right.
Well, it's been a huge pleasure. Catch up soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, thank you.
Bye.